Hello everyone and welcome back to the final session of Join Digital episode 4. So I hope you found today's sessions all beneficial so far. For our last session we have got Analytics Solutions and Strategy Principal Jimmy Yee from Allant Group joining us. So big thank you to Jimmy for coming along today. Like the previous sessions, send over any questions that you may have. We'll try and get to them at the end. Any that we don't cover we will answer via email. The session's due to last about 30 minutes or so, and we are recording the session. So this session, like all the other sessions that we've had in all previous episodes, will be available on demand, and we'll be sharing a link at the end of this session where you can find those recordings. So Jimmy, I'm going to pass the screen over to you if you're ready to go.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent.
All right, so thank you so much for the introduction, Jennifer, and thanks to everyone out there who took the time to join us today. I'm going to be covering a fairly comprehensive list of analytics topics, really across the entire customer lifecycle. So I think there's going to be a little something of interest for everyone today over the next 30 minutes, regardless of your comfort level or previous experience with advanced analytics methodologies. So without further ado, let's start with a quick hit on data strategy, as data is the foundation for just about everything we do. So with the proliferation of data sources and all the ways customers can interact with a brand today, it's obviously of paramount importance that all the information is in an organized and accessible environment. So thank goodness for platforms like BlueVenn that can do a lot of that dirty work for you and allow marketers to focus on what they're really good at. BlueVenn facilitates the ability for you to accomplish your goals with the efficiency of having all the data right at your fingertips, and has the functionality to take new approaches to solve old problems, maybe in ways that were not previously possible for you. So that being said, it's really still vital to have a sound data strategy. If there isn't a collaborative shared vision across the entire organization, a clear roadmap and documentation of the vital sources, definitions, and data flow, and leaders in all departments who really buy in and commit to creating this continuity, right? Just even in calculations and naming conventions, for example, that vital foundation of data could really be on shaky ground. So this could really result in an organization just recreating the existing issues on different platforms, and just something as basic as not having your website tagged properly to capture the right data points can impede your success. So be sure to have your housekeeping in order, and engage with partners who can provide expertise if necessary. So let's assume that you have all your data in order. Now, how are you going to get the most out of all that data? So whether you're currently considering BlueVenn or are already in the implementation process, advanced analytics is a great path to make sure you hit the ground running from day one and maximize the return on your investment immediately. And if you already have the platform stood up, advanced analytics can really help you take it to the next level with a scientific approach to solving your marketing issues. So next, let's just move on to an overview of advanced analytics. And in this section, I'll also give you a quick preview of all the topics that we're going to cover today. We talk about analytics in 3 basic categories. You can see on the up and down y-axis there that the value to the business increases with the increase in analytic sophistication, as you can see there on the x-axis. Descriptive analytics seeks to explain what happened and why it happened. Predictive analytics forecasts what will likely happen next. And prescriptive analytics really provides that aspect of, what are the next best steps. And just to be clear on this slide, this is not an analytics roadmap. This is not in any kind of sequential order. You don't have to start with descriptive and then move to predictive followed by prescriptive. The right solution for you today might lie within any of these categories. And I'll also add that, as you'll see today, these categorizations are not mutually exclusive. There are many approaches that fall into, kind of a gray area, somewhere in between these categories. So let's take a look at a very basic customer life cycle. You start with generating demand for your goods or services, which leads to a first purchase. From there, some customers lag and are categorized as indecisive, while others engage further to become repeat customers. Now, some of those customers go on to become some of your most valuable customers, and then others might lapse after a repeat purchase or two. So we obviously want to drive those lapsed customers back to the brand. And while technically these are repeat purchasers since they've made a purchase before, I have this particular arrow going from lapsed to indecisive, right? I think the treatment for these customers is going to be more closely aligned to that group, as opposed to that consistent upward trajectory you see across the top there. So let's next look at what are the different advanced analytic approaches that apply to each of these basic phases. Now you can see in acquisition, we have profiling, clone modeling, response modeling. There's some analytics under growth, retention, and win back. And as you look across these and based on your experience, and especially if you're a seasoned pro, you might actually question whether each of these topics are categorized properly. For example, if you're trying to win back lost customers, you can surely use customer lifetime value to try to save those with the most future potential, or you can apply a lift model to specifically target audiences who are offer responsive and don't usually buy of their own volition. So, this kind of starts to talk about some of the main points I hope you walk away with today, is that, a model does not always solve just one problem. Very often multiple models are combined together. And even when a model is used as a standalone, it can serve multiple purposes, in and of itself. So one of the main focuses for today is segmentation. And I think that's kind of a topic that everyone's familiar with to some degree. And, it's really easy to see that segmentation can be used across all 4 phases here. And if you think about the previous slide, segmentation can also be categorized as descriptive, segmentation can be predictive, and segmentation can also be prescriptive. So let's cover off on that first phase of acquisition analytics. Now, let's just first take a look at a few customer profiles here. Some of these are likely to exist as a significant group in just about any customer database out there. So, first we have an individual who's male, single, age 22 to 28, no children, income 65 to 90, and they're a gamer. We have a household married profile, right? We have an individual female who's married. And then back there on the 4th profile, we have an individual female who's single and likely widowed, age 71, no children, income 17 to 26K, and who's really interested in reading. So now obviously here we have an objective, right? And that is to take this customer database, identify unique groups, right? So that we can really focus on individuals. Now, profiling is just fine, right? If you're just talking about delivering of the descriptive, but if you think about how you want to use profiling for acquisition, it falls a bit short. So let's just say, for example, that first individual male profile there on the left really describes your best customers, and those are the customers you want to acquire, right? And then let's say you have an individual who's male, who's single, age 22 to 28, has no children, right? So far so good, but they have 64K income. Now that 64K income falls outside of that, identified income range there. So that individual will not be selected into your audience, even though they're likely a great target for you. So put it another way, profiles are really exclusive by nature when it comes to audience selection. Now, what we're going to talk about next, alternatively, predictive models calculate a final score for each and every individual based on how close they are to every single identified differentiating factor. All right, so that means that the individual we just talked about would actually score very high and very likely be in your audience selection. So let me give you a quick visual of how a predictive model works in action. All right, so here we have a prospect universe of potential customers. Before data analysis, they all kind of look the same. When we apply the predictive model algorithm, each individual gets a numerical score so that the best prospects to target are actually revealed. And now you can get a clear view of your primary audience with the most potential to convert, right? Now you have everyone up in that top 30%. So that a typical result of a predictive model audience selection goes something like this. It's like we can drive the same number of responders by targeting just 30% of the universe as, compared to communicating to everyone. So, as mentioned, the predictive model is all inclusive. So the entire universe is actually scored and ranked in order. And this is extremely important, right? When we think about how we're going to activate and how we're going to optimize this model and optimize audience selection moving forward. All right, so we'll get to that in a little bit. But first, we're going to talk about a customer clone lookalike model and a response model, which are the 2 primary audience selection types. All right. So, really a predictive model is about calculating expected response rates across any universe. All right, you have your brand acquisition database. The predictive model scores and ranks prospects from best to worst. So it's scoring and ranking everybody in order, right, of who's most likely to respond, all the way down to those that are least likely to respond. Again, it's simultaneously analyzing all those relevant variables. And so the difference between a customer clone model and a response model is that the customer clone model is based on the demographics of current customers, right? And then that could be based on a subset of current customers. Let's just say you want to target people who look like your best customers. That's what the customer clone model is going to do, right? A response model takes that one step further and looks at recent campaigns, looks at recent responders, look at recent acquisitions, and really focuses on finding those differentiating factors that predict response, as opposed to just lookalikes. All right. So really, you can see now that you can obviously maximize your ROI by focusing on the right target audience. So again, a recent model we built captures 70% of the responders by targeting just 30% of the potential universe. It's almost a 250% lift. So clearly, you want to budget the highest percentage to those that are most likely to respond. As we start to think about activation and optimization, you always want to budget a smaller but statistically significant percentage to those that are less likely to respond. You want to do ongoing model validation. You want to see, a steady pattern of diminishing returns across your audiences that are scored from best to worst. Oftentimes you see after a period of time, your model might degrade. So if you start to get some, scattered results, then you know that it's time to refresh that model. Now, the other aspect of this is that you also want to allow for some unexpected results. You want to identify customer segments not previously isolated or that may not even exist in your current database right now. Oftentimes the database, the current customers, is a product of the type of marketing you've done in the past, right? And the type of targeting you've done in the past. So when you use a predictive model, you often find that people that you weren't expecting to respond do so. And all of a sudden now you start to identify different customer segments that you may not have been targeting before. So really what we're talking about is a predictive model is not just an audience targeting mechanism, but it really creates a scientific platform for reporting, analysis, and optimization. Now, you're not just saying, hey, what was the ROI in this campaign? Maybe the ROI wasn't great, but now you're able to say, hey, did the people who we expected to respond? Right? Were there any unexpected responders? Is the response diminishing? Showing the diminishing returns that we're expecting to see. Right? So now you can start to think about how these predictive models can be used in combination with other models, right, and other factors. And just for a simple example, let's take geographic distance. Let's say you're trying to drive people to a physical store location. Now, when you're really in a tight radius there, you have the ability to really cast a wider net and maybe go down deeper, into your scored audience list. Now, as you get further out from the store, you can refine that audience selection. And if you get really far away from the store location, you can just really focus on those that are most likely to respond. Again, optimizing your budget and optimizing response. And clearly, right, if online purchasing is your main channel, then now you don't have to worry about that at all, and you can really cast a much wider net, without that geographic parameter. So really, again, long story short here is that you really want to start thinking about how you can use this model. The model can be used on the entire universe, on a subset of the universe. It can be used in combinations with other factors. So hopefully this gets your mind spinning a little bit on, the possibilities that you have when you have a tool, an algorithm that can score and rank the entire universe in order. So just for a quick review, we talked about profile analysis, indexes customers versus other customer groups and the general population to really find those variables that are indexing high that really differentiate your customers. Right, you can build a customer clone model that calculates scores across the entire prospect universe, utilizes the right combination of factors, different factors with differing degrees of predictive power, to really give you one final score to make that audience selection really, really easy. And then you can migrate to a response model where the algorithm is really optimized to just focus on those variables that differentiate responders. All right. So really what I like to say is that data science does not replace industry expertise, business acumen, or gut instinct. It's just a way to guide, measure, and optimize it. All right, so let's move into the next phase that we saw in that customer life cycle, which is growth analytics. I'm going to start with incremental uplift modeling. You know, there are so many brands today that are struggling with the discounts that have been given over such a long period of time. You know, customers are so used to getting that discount. With some brands, people won't even shop unless they have some kind of great offer in their hand. So what uplift modeling does is it really tries to separate those that are likely to buy of their own volition, right? Separate those people from the people that are really, really offer responsive. So again, you can start to optimize your budgeting and audience selection. So over there on the left, you see an audience response model. And again, this is a combination of two models that we're going to use here. The audience response model isolates and builds a model based on customers who received and redeemed. So that algorithm is going to combine those variables that are most predictive of somebody with that type of behavior. Over there on the left, you see the control purchase model. This isolates customers who didn't receive an offer but made a purchase anyway. So really looking for those variables that describe, you know, individuals who purchase of their own volition. Now these two models are combined, as you can see in the middle, to create a nested model, and the resulting combined score ranks customers in order based on their likelihood to purchase only in response to an offer. All right, so I'm going to show that visually here in a little bit of a different way. We want to see the highest incremental response and the highest scoring 10% or 20%, you know, of the audience. So you can see the yellow bar is the audience response, the blue is the control response. The difference in the delta between the audience and the control is that incremental response rate that you're looking for. And you can see as you go down the scored audience down to the bottom, sometimes you even get, you know, negative incremental response, right? Because now these are the people who are least offer responsive and also most likely to buy of their own volition. All right, hope that makes sense. Let's move on to customer lifetime value. I'm going to just show a few different approaches here, and this kind of spans descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive as well too. So the first one is current realized. It's a customer net present value. It's actual customer value. So really similar to an RFM model. It's a net profit attributed to a current customer, and it really just sets the foundation, you know, for a forecasting for a future looking customer lifetime value model, a CLV model. So that's what we move on to next, and that combines the customer net present value model that we just talked about plus the survival model. So how long is this customer likely to survive and what are they worth? So looking at lifetime value based on margin and survival rate. And then we have potential customer lifetime value. Once you have a customer lifetime value model, you break down your customers into tiers, and then this model goes into each of those tiers and identifies those customers that are most likely to migrate to the higher bands. All right, so now you have something that's predictive, right, and something that's prescriptive in nature as well too. So if you want to use this customer lifetime value model to target prospects in the universe, right, obviously there's not going to be any transaction data for those acquisition targets. So now we're talking about stripping away the transactions and looking at those demographics and psychographics and building a model to identify those prospects who look most like your high CLTV customers, for example. All right. So that's customer lifetime value in a nutshell. And now we move on to customer journey. This is just a basic customer journey. As you can see in the outer circle, all your acquisition targets going to go through some kind of a process of awareness, discovery, research, comparison, you know, consideration, which really eventually drives that purchase. And then, you know, you want to kind of bring them in closer, shorten that cycle, and create repeat customers, and ultimately, you know, achieving loyal brand advocates as much as possible. So, you know, longitudinal data analysis takes a long-term view, looks at interactions and behaviors over a period of time, so you can really identify baseline patterns of behavior, find pivotal moments, identify the gaps, and really create things that can help, you know, where it's most needed. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I just kind of wanted to walk you through a quick case study. Now, a customer journey can, you know, be really expansive and span the entire journey from pre-acquisition to an unlimited amount of time, right? For, you know, a complete end-to-end view. In this particular case study I'm going to be talking about, the scope is limited to address the specific goal of understanding the customer journey for new customers over their first year after the initial purchase. So, obviously the repeat purchase rate is what's really, really important. So if I zoom on that first graphic there, you can see on the left, we looked at the entire universe of customers. We looked at customers with no engagement, and then we looked at multiple combinations of interaction channels. Down here on the left, you can see that it's a private label credit card, it's digital, it's direct mail, it's loyalty program, and email. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this, it's quite an eye chart, so you don't have to look in, but there's earn burn metrics for loyalty. But the real thing you want to look at is the arrows here. So, over these separate time periods, you can see how the repeat purchase rate is growing, right? So even without looking at any of the numbers or taking a look too deeply, you can see in each of these sections that, hey, this group down here that has a lot of engagement obviously has better repeat purchase rates regardless of what period you look at. And these repeat purchase rates are accumulating. So at the end of that first 12-month period, you can see significant differences in these customers who engage with these channels versus those who don't, versus kind of the average, which would be the whole universe here. All right. So then after that, I just wanted to mention that we looked at all combinations of interaction channels in this case. We looked at mutually exclusive groups, non-mutually exclusive groups, right? Just email and loyalty, all different combinations to really arrive at, what was the most impactful channels and combinations, all right? Now, we also looked at communication engagement too. And just for simplicity here, you can just see that the open rates and the engagement is very, very high at the beginning, indicated by these circles. You can see down here there's a 22.5% open rate. At the end of that 12-month period, it goes all the way down to 8.3. So certainly some optimization can be had with the email program. All right. Now, the culmination of multiple visualizations and a lot of collaboration with the client ended up with this, single summary view. Now, again, there's probably about 15 to 20 different visualizations, but this is kind of the summary view here. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but you can see these different engagement combinations, right? So this pink arrow represents this combination of channels, right? And you can see as you follow this along, right, within this first 0 to 4 week period, what was the repeat purchase rate online, in store, what was the average ticket, right? And then it kind of goes around and looks at 4 to 13 weeks, 13 to 52 week period, which is in this quadrant here. So that way we're looking at repeat purchase rates, spend, marketing engagement, all in one shot summary view. All right. Now here's an example of something a bit more complicated than that, taking a holistic end-to-end view of the customer journey from initial onboarding, all the way to customer advocacy. So really trying to understand the pillars of the program, identifying the gaps, prioritizing the most impactful initiatives, discovering any overlapping facets for economy of scales, really to develop communication flows and response engagement driven cadence variations. And your customer journey can also include creative examples to really give some context to what you're seeing here. All right. Now, moving on to retention analytics. First thing I want to mention very quickly is experimental design. Now a tool like BlueVenn has the ability to let you know what offers are working best and kind of automatically do that for you. But, here's an analytic approach where, as opposed to ABCD testing, fractional factorial analysis is really going to allow you to just choose a few combinations that are going to be representative of the whole. So if you have this set of factors that might go into a communication, and there's 3 variations here for offer, 3, 5, 3, 6, 4, right? If you multiply all that, every single combination with these factors equals 3,240 combinations, right? So impossible to test all those combinations. What the model will do is it'll select 25 to 30 combinations of these factors that are really representative of the whole. And based on the results of those 25 to 30, you can extrapolate and rank in order all 3,240 combinations. All right, just to quickly touch on attrition and risk modeling. This is a survival probability decile. So deciles are simply, your scored and ranked universe broken up into 10 equal pieces. So deciles, right? Now, this is the audience we would want to target here. Now, what these graphs down here represent are the survival curve and the hazard curve for multiple different segments, each color down here representing a different segment, right? So you can see the survival rate on the top is really 100% at the beginning, and then over time, that is going to diminish. People are going to fall off, right? Now you can see here that, for your best segments, the survival rate is probably about 45 weeks as an average. And, for those lower performing segments, maybe it's about 25 weeks. All right. Now this hazard curve over here, you can see this is based on more of an actuarial methodology. So it's really looking at, hey, if you can make it to 10 weeks, the survival is the rate of survival is much, much better, right? So your hazard, your likelihood to attrite is really go down if you can make it past that initial period. All right. So let's touch on customer segmentation. I can see that my time is running short already. So really organic clustering is about identifying natural patterns in the data, right? Algorithms are going to separate customers into groups that are homogeneous within themselves, but significantly differentiated from other customer groupings. Now, this is going to give you all kinds of detailed insights by segment. You can see some things down here like gamer versus non-gamer activities. This was one for one of our Las Vegas casino clients, so this is specific to them, but you can get information about demographics, behavioral interactions, marketing, and attitudinal factors. All right, the three main steps to customer segmentation, which throughout a lot of the process really involves science plus art, is exploratory data analysis. It's really where you want to immerse yourself in the brand, discover some correlation and causation of those data points, and then move on to segmentation process where you have a bunch of individual models. You can combine all these models into an ensemble segmentation, right? And then you want to have a champion model in the end. Now you could do a segmentation and see what 4 segments might look like, see what 7 segments look like, see if it makes sense even to go to 10 segments. So, really it's a process. Again, here's where, really combines the science and the art to really try to understand what's going to make sense, what really it creates differentiated segments, and what's really actionable based on the resources that you have available. And then obviously you want to actually create those segments and persona development to bring those segments to life and really give some contextual understanding, right? So that the creative can do their job properly as well too. So here's a quick customer segment, right? You can name it something fun like young and diverse with an active purse, which is one of my favorite names. But this segment would represent 11% of customers with 27.4% of total revenue. So really a great segment. You can kind of see some contextual information over here and then kind of see some other motivators that this segment might have. All right. Now, the other last point I want to make about segmentation is, survey data as an attitudinal input. You can sample both customers and non-customers. So, you're really getting, even closer to getting all this quantitative stuff to a more qualitative understanding, right? Sometimes an incentive is required to drive response, but you can start to get to the heart of things like category attitudes and value and, what are the motivating power of those desired attributes, right? So this brings us full circle back to the first slide that I showed you. And, I just kind of want to touch on this briefly that, now, this custom segmentation is so powerful, right? Historically, brands had 2 segmentation schemas. There was a brand segmentation, which was primarily based on focus groups and surveys. So, not really a lot of real data. Then marketers would have their own segmentation for their customer database to facilitate one-to-one marketing. Now, with a custom segmentation approach, you can have one unified segmentation for the entire brand so that everyone is talking off the same play sheet, right? So, for example, you might have 7 primary segments that are used for mass brand advertising. And you could have those 7 primary segments further tied down to an unlimited number of microsegments for true personalization, right? These segments are pushed into your planning tools and activated at the individual person level for adjustable TV and digital efforts and things like that. All right. Looks like we're right at 11 o'clock, so I'm going to rush through these last few slides here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this architecture, but you can kind of see where the BlueVenn CDP platform and where analytics can really help that CDP platform to be able to drive audiences across all the channels. Here's another little view of that with how analytics, data, and insights can really target your anonymous segments, your identified individuals across any occasions or any specific individuals, right, through all the relevant channels there. Here's just a quick slide on data sources, on how analytics can be used for audience scoring, and then you can push that specific audience through multiple channels. All right, and then here's a strategic blueprint. Really, it's about creating a short and long-term roadmap to success, a collaborative shared vision, right? With whoever you might be partnering with. Now, in the middle, you see building deeper and more profitable customer relationships. Everything else is blurred for proprietary reasons, but essentially, the bigger the circle is, right, the higher it is in category. So the smaller bubbles kind of represent subcategories stemming out from that main category, and then how close each circle is to a circle that's larger than itself is kind of the priority ordering. So this is really a long-term blueprint to keep everybody on the same page. Again, create that collaborative shared vision, okay? And I just feel like I'd be a little remiss if I didn't at least mention the elephant in the room that's probably keeping everybody at home today as opposed to being in the office, and that's COVID-19 recovery. And since my time is up, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but obviously we're facing significant unknowns. We just don't know what's going to happen in the future, and there's such a huge potential for subsequent waves of store closures due to additional rounds of infection. So we've created at Allant a visualization tool to ease the burden of risk mitigation. Now, this has COVID-19 data in it, and it can be easily customized to include store locations, distribution centers, customers, just about any data point. Right, so now we can see here that a couple different views, national view, number of cases by county. You can see that same view with only geographic areas that have store locations, and you can hover over counties to actually see week over week trends, right? Number of cases, percentage change week over week. Here's just a couple more views. These icons on the right over here will show by icon, by color, by which direction the arrow is going, the week over week trends. All right. So, really, if you start to think about what's going on now, whether you have a lot of analytics in place or whether you haven't done any, now is the time to probably revise a lot of that or start anew, right? I mean, you could have a customer segmentation, you could have a good understanding of the behavior of your customers, but now we're really operating in a different paradigm. And, easy example, if your store is primarily brick and mortar, right, now you're likely to have a lot more online customers, right? As waves of stores start to reopen, right, since we're talking about forecasting here, you can see it at the end of period 4 that different groups of stores based on when they open are going to be at a different phase in their recovery process and have you have a different number of early returners and be at a different point in the recovery process. So, any forecasting models you have from the past can be thrown out the window. And, that can be similarly said for just about any other analytics you have, right? It might have become moot, or, it might be needed to just make some revisions, create some new segments, and let's take a acquisition model, for example. Right, you really want to be able to identify who those early returners are so that you can be targeting the right audiences, whether it be for acquisition or for current customer campaigns. So that brings me to the end. Sorry to have gone over a few minutes.
That's okay, Jimmy, don't worry, only 3 minutes. We have had some questions through. I'm going to pick one and we'll answer the rest offline. We'll try and squeeze that in now. So someone has asked what the advantages are of having a custom segmentation versus off-the-shelf segmentation schema. So if you could give us a bit of information about the differences there, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's something that we deal with on a regular basis. So if you think back to the slide about segmentation, right, and some of the things that I said, that really starts to set the foundation for the answer to that question. Now, off-the-shelf models are great. If that's what you're using, that's awesome. The difference with a custom segmentation is it's going to take your transaction data and particular demographics, right, that pertain to your specific customers, not just the general population, not a segmentation schema that was built on the entire universe, right? So what that's going to do for you is it's going to tie your transactions to demographics, create custom segments for you, right? So now your best customers aren't going to fall into, let's say 4 or 5 predefined clusters. All your best customers are going to be in, one grouping, All right. So as we talked about how you can activate your segments across multiple channels, this makes that just that much easier, right? I'll just add one more point, right? If you look at targeting a off-the-shelf model, and hey, this segment contains most of our best customers, right? You're using that segment, but half the people in that segment aren't going to necessarily be people who are, tightly tied to the demographics of your customers. So that would be the quick answer.
Perfect, thanks, Jimmy. So thank you very much for hosting our last session at Join Digital episode 4. It was great to have you. And thanks everyone for logging in and logging in previous sessions from today. So this has been our 4th episode of Join so far that we've been running every Wednesday, we like to say. So we're going to give ourselves a break for a couple of weeks, but we do hope to be back. So keep an eye out for any notifications from us, and we'll try and bring you some more great content in the upcoming months. So as I've mentioned a few times today, each Join Digital session is available on demand from Friday. So just follow the link that you can see on the screen and you should be able to catch up on any of the content there. If you find yourself missing Join Digital next Wednesday, then don't worry, we've got loads of great content that we've already run in previous months and especially in the last year or two. We've got loads of great webinars on demand that you can find on our Bright Talk channel. So all you need to do is go to brighttalk.com, search for Blue Ven, and there's tons of great webinars on demand. We've actually got a webinar coming up in 2 weeks that we'll be hosting on Bright Talk. That's all about identity resolution. So if you think that would be of interest, then make sure you sign up for that. We'll also send out an email to our database, so keep an eye out. So big thank you for our audience for logging in each week. We've thoroughly enjoyed the last 4 weeks and running our pop-up online conference. It's been really fun, and we've really enjoyed having all of our partners join us for the event too. So you'll be hearing from us very soon. Hope you have a lovely rest of your week and weekend, and thanks very much.